In the heat of a hot summer day, when the silence of the village was broken only by the rustling of leaves and the chirping of birds, Farmer John, a man with strong hands and simple thoughts, discovered something that could change his life forever. His field, stretching for several kilometers, lay under the scorching sun when he felt a strange tension in the air. An unusual silence enveloped everything around him, and the sky on the horizon darkened as if clouds were rapidly gathering. The grass stopped moving, and even the wind, which had always been John's faithful companion in his hard work, suddenly fell still. He walked along his usual route, across the field to the livestock pen, when he suddenly noticed strange movement at the edge of his property. It was something that could have been his imagination, but no, on the horizon, blending with the dark forest, appeared shadows. At first, they seemed small, but the closer they got, the more John realized these were not just animals. Huge wolves, like burning lights in the night, stood at the edge of his field. He could make out their outlines, muscular bodies shimmering in the rays of the setting sun, and glowing eyes piercing his gaze as if they knew something he didn't. But what was truly strange was that the wolves didn't approach the house, didn't growl, didn't threaten. They simply stood there, as if observing John, whose heart was beating faster than usual. Couldn't look away from the sight. He knew something was wrong, but didn't know what exactly. He remembered the old stories about wolves that sometimes appear near people, but none of them matched this moment. The next day, they appeared again. There were more of them, and they stood in exactly the same position. And again, instead of attacking, they behaved strangely, as if they were trying to say something. John didn't know what to think. He began to feel the tension building in his nerves. But in their eyes was not aggression, but some kind of anxiety, as if the wolves were waiting for something. Days passed, and John saw the wolves more and more often on his land. At night, he even heard their howls, but it wasn't the usual kind of howl. This was something unusual. It was as if the sounds were carrying him to another place, to another reality, as if the wolves were trying to convey something important. And one night, he decided he could no longer avoid this. He approached one of them. The huge female stood motionless. Only her eyes followed his every step. He extended his hand toward her, almost feeling his heart ready to leap from his chest. The wolf looked at him, and John suddenly felt something shift in the air. The wolf's gaze softened, and John realized that this was not just an animal, but something far more complex. The next few days, he kept coming back to the wolves. He no longer feared them, but instead, he felt some kind of invisible bond growing between them. He began to notice that the wolves were not just seeking food or shelter. They seemed to be waiting for something. And one night, when John sat by the fire at the edge of the forest, he saw them again. This time, not one, but a whole pack of wolves approached him and stood around him. As if forming a circle, he could hear their breathing synchronizing with his own. It was a strange feeling, realizing that you are at the center of something much bigger than yourself. And in that moment, one of the wolves, old and wise, approached him, its eyes meeting John's, and suddenly, as if in response to some invisible call, John began to understand what was happening. He felt how fragments of thoughts and images started to come together in his mind. The wolves were not just wild beasts. They were ancient beings, bearers of knowledge, hidden from the world of humans. They were messengers. Their task was to protect the balance between the world of men and the world of nature. And now, for some unknown reason, they had chosen him. One day, when John again ventured into the forest with the wolves, they led him to the deepest part of the woods, where he had never been. There, among the thickets, lay a cave, which turned out to be more than just a cave. It was an ancient sanctuary. The walls were covered with mysterious drawings and symbols, which John immediately recognized. He had seen these markings once in his father's books. Entering the heart of the cave, he realized that this place was connected to an ancient civilization, one that had vanished many years ago. Those who had left these markings had possessed knowledge that was meant to remain hidden. But the deeper John delved into this mystery, the more he felt the wolves were taking him into the unknown. They were the guardians of ancient knowledge, but now he too had become part of it. And just when John thought he understood everything, the light in the cave went out. The wolves disappeared as silently as they had come. His life returned to its usual rhythm, but John knew. He now carried a secret that no one else could comprehend. He went back to working on his farm, but in his heart remained the mystery that no one, except him, could understand. The wolves were gone, but John knew their presence was still near. He felt that his life had been changed forever. What would you have done in John's place? Would you trust wild wolves? Leave a comment.